The crisp morning light filtered through the towering windows of Evelyn Carrington's Manhattan penthouse, illuminating her meticulously curated life. At 48, Evelyn was the CEO of Argent Dynamics, a premier tech solutions company with global reach. She was hailed as a business genius, her analytical mind slicing through corporate obstacles with surgical precision. Yet, as she prepared for her 20th wedding anniversary celebration that evening, a faint sense of unease tickled the edges of her thoughts. The gala, hosted in their private ballroom, was meant to be a celebration of enduring love and unassailable success. The guest list boasted an elite cadre of CEOs, politicians, and philanthropists, each representing a strategic node in Evelyn's expansive network. The evening was perfect, or so she had planned. "Everything is under control," her assistant Marissa chirped over the phone. "The caterers, the string quartet, and even the vintage Dom Perignon are ready." Evelyn glanced at the shimmering platinum gown laid across her bed. "Good," she replied, her voice as polished as her public persona. "Let's ensure tonight leaves a lasting impression." In her sprawling home office, Evelyn reviewed the day's market reports. As she skimmed through the quarterly analytics, a message pinged on her private email. It was from Gabriel Shaw, her husband. The subject line read, "Looking forward to tonight." She opened it. "20 years together and I'm more grateful than ever. You're the cornerstone of my life in every way that matters. Can't wait to celebrate us tonight. Theodore." Evelyn stared at the message longer than she intended. It was warm, sincere, yet it felt rehearsed. Gabriel had always been the softer counterpart to her sharp edges, an affable literary professor whose charm disarmed even Evelyn's fiercest critics. But recently, his late-night lectures and departmental meetings had taken on a suspicious frequency. Brushing off her thoughts, Evelyn turned to another email, this one marked confidential. It was a financial report from the company's international branch, detailing a massive, unaccounted-for transfer. Her COO, Robert Liddell, had flagged it with a note. "Unusual activity. Might need your review before we escalate." As Evelyn dug into the details, her instincts sharpened. The funds had been routed through a labyrinth of shell companies, eventually vanishing into an untraceable account in the Cayman Islands. Argent Dynamics protocols were airtight. This breach wasn't accidental. Her mind flashed to Robert's earlier comment about Gabriel's recent attendance at industry events he normally avoided. Could he? Evelyn muttered, then shook her head. Gabriel had no access to Argent's systems, but someone close to her did. The anniversary celebration began as planned. The ballroom glittered with opulence, every detail a testament to Evelyn's vision. Gabriel looked effortlessly dashing in his tailored tuxedo, moving through the crowd with his usual affability. "Evelyn, darling," called Claudia Monroe, a socialite known for her talent for gossip. 20 years, and still the queen of the empire. You must tell me your secret." Evelyn smiled tightly. "Discipline Claudia in life and love." She scanned the room, her gaze landing on Robert Liddell. He was conversing with Gabriel near the bar, their laughter too comfortable. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. A text from her IT chief read, "You were right. The breach originated from your personal login. Need to discuss immediately." Evelyn's pulse quickened. Her personal login? Impossible. As she crossed the room, Gabriel intercepted her, holding out a glass of champagne. "To us," he said, his smile as warm as ever, "and to everything we've built together." Evelyn raised her glass, her eyes steady on his. "To trust," she replied. Somewhere in the depths of her perfect life, something was fracturing. Evelyn just didn't know how deep the break would go. Evelyn's thoughts churned beneath her composed exterior as the anniversary celebration wore on. The ballroom glittered, and the crowd mingled with an energy that might have been intoxicating under different circumstances. But Evelyn's mind was elsewhere, retracing details with the precision of an engineer analyzing the integrity of a failing structure. Gabriel had always been her safe harbor in a world of corporate chaos, his literary pursuits and soft-spoken manner a counterweight to her relentless ambition. And yet, the subtle changes in his behavior, the unexpected work dinners, his newfound interest in high-profile galas, began aligning with the troubling financial anomaly in her company. She excused herself from the crowd, slipping upstairs to her office. She needed clarity. Her private workspace was a sanctuary of order, its walls lined with awards and recognitions that chronicled her meteoric rise. Evelyn locked the door behind her and opened her laptop. The email from the IT chief demanded immediate attention. The breach used your personal login, timestamped at 11:42 p.m. 2 weeks ago. Accessed files include internal financial reports, contracts, and several flagged communications from the Cayman subsidiary. We've begun investigating internally, but it appears someone familiar with your credentials executed this. Evelyn's fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitation creeping in, a rare sensation for her. Who could have accessed her personal login? Gabriel? No. He didn't have the expertise or reason. Her COO, Robert? That seemed plausible, but his loyalty had always appeared steadfast. Unless... She pulled up security footage from the night in question, narrowing the timestamp to 11:42 p.m. The footage revealed Gabriel entering her office. He appeared at ease, unhurried, his silhouette unmistakable. Evelyn's stomach tightened. He had no reason to be in her office, much less at that hour. What was he looking for? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Ev? Gabriel's voice was muffled but unmistakable. Are you up here? Quickly closing her laptop, Evelyn stood and smoothed her gown. She opened the door, her practiced smile in place. Just checking some last-minute details for work, she said, gesturing casually at her desk. Everything okay downstairs? Gabriel leaned against the doorframe, his face unreadable. Everyone's asking for you. It's not an anniversary without the guest of honor. I'll be right down, Evelyn assured him, her tone light. She reached out and adjusted his tie, her fingers brushing the silk fabric. Thanks for checking on me. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Evelyn watched him retreat down the hall, her heart heavy with questions she couldn't yet answer. The following morning, Evelyn woke early, slipping out of bed before Gabriel stirred. She had a plan, and it required discretion. With coffee in hand, she made her way back to the office and dialed Robert. We have a serious problem, she began, her voice clipped. Someone accessed my personal credentials and pulled sensitive files. I want you to focus on anyone with both access and motive. Robert was quiet for a moment before responding. Evelyn, this sounds like an inside job. Are you thinking corporate espionage or something more personal? Her grip on the phone tightened. Right now, I don't have the luxury of ruling anything out. Keep this confidential. Over the next few days, Evelyn maintained her professional facade while conducting her own covert investigation. Each interaction with Gabriel became a delicate dance. She watched his movements more closely, noting his comings and goings, the way his phone seemed to buzz constantly with messages he read but rarely explained. One evening, as they sat over dinner, Evelyn probed carefully. How's the literary department handling the recent budget cuts? She asked, her tone casual. Gabriel shrugged. It's been challenging, but we're managing. I've been helping coordinate a fundraiser to offset some of the losses. A fundraiser? Evelyn echoed, her interest piqued. Just something small, he replied, brushing off her question. A few donors from the university's network. Evelyn tilted her head, studying him. You've been spending a lot of time with new people lately. Gabriel paused mid-bite. That's the nature of fundraising, Ev. You know how these things work." "Of course," she said, letting the topic drop. But her mind continued to turn over the details. The break in the case came unexpectedly. Evelyn had enlisted her IT chief, Anthony, to dig deeper into the financial anomaly. Late one night, her phone lit up with a message. "We've traced the transfer to an account linked to Shoreline Consulting. It appears they were set up as a shell entity under Argent Dynamics umbrella 6 months ago." Evelyn frowned. Shoreline Consulting was familiar. Too familiar. Gabriel had mentioned working with a consulting group by that name while helping organize the university fundraiser. The next morning, Evelyn made a call to a trusted investigator, Sylvia King. Sylvia's reputation for uncovering corporate fraud was unmatched, and Evelyn knew she needed an expert. Within 48 hours, Sylvia uncovered a web of connections that left Evelyn reeling. Gabriel had indeed partnered with Shoreline Consulting, but the scheme went deeper. His name was absent from any official documentation, but his fingerprints were everywhere. Through Gabriel's academic network, he had facilitated introductions to key Argent executives, suddenly gaining access to corporate channels under the guise of philanthropy. More damning was the revelation that Gabriel had been meeting regularly with Robert Liddell. The two had exchanged encrypted messages and met at a private members-only club Evelyn had dismissed as a harmless indulgence. The betrayal was multifaceted, professional and personal, colliding in a way Evelyn hadn't anticipated. The final confirmation came during an unplanned confrontation. Evelyn had returned home earlier than usual and found Gabriel in her office, rifling through her desk. "Looking for something?" she asked, her voice icy. Gabriel froze, his hand hovering over a drawer. Slowly, he turned to face her. "Evelyn, I didn't expect you back." She crossed her arms, her gaze steady. "Clearly, care to explain why you're in my office?" Again. His usual charm faltered. "I needed a file, something for the university fundraiser." Evelyn stepped closer, her voice lowering. "Cut the act, Gabriel. I know about Shoreline Consulting. I know about the account in the Caymans, and I know you've been working with Robert." The color drained from his face. For a moment, he looked like a cornered animal. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," she snapped. "You used me, my company, my resources. For what? A power grab? A payout?" Gabrielle's shoulders sagged. "It started as a way to prove myself. Do you know how it feels to be constantly overshadowed? To always be Evelyn Carrington's husband? You have no idea what that's like." Evelyn's heart twisted, but she refused to let it show. "So, you decided to sabotage the life we built together." "You built it," he said bitterly. "I was just along for the ride." The second part of Evelyn's story ends with her resolve hardening. She would not allow her empire or her dignity to be taken. If Gabriel thought he could outmaneuver her, he was sorely mistaken. This battle had just begun. The confrontation in Evelyn's office marked the beginning of a silent war. Gabriel hadn't admitted to everything, but his reaction to her accusations told her enough. He was guilty. Yet, Evelyn knew she needed proof that would hold up against the layers of manipulation he and Robert had woven into their scheme. That evening, as Gabriel slept in the guest room, their unspoken compromise after the argument, Evelyn opened her laptop. She initiated the remote access software Sylvia King had installed earlier that day. With it, Evelyn could track Gabriel's every digital move, from emails to encrypted messages. Gabriel had grown cautious after their confrontation, but even his best efforts to cover his tracks couldn't outmatch Evelyn's technological expertise. She began finding trails he thought he'd erased, fragments of deleted emails, abandoned draft messages, and logs of video calls with Robert Liddell. Each piece painted a clearer picture of their collusion. The next morning, Evelyn arrived at Argent Dynamics earlier than usual. She called a private meeting with Sylvia King, Robert's deputy chief, and Anthony, the IT chief. "Robert is not to know about this meeting," Evelyn began, her voice clipped. "Gabriel and he are involved in a scheme to undermine Argent's financial stability. We need to secure every vulnerable system and access point immediately." Sylvia placed a folder on the table, her expression grave. "I've been analyzing the connections between Gabriel, Shortline Consulting, and Robert. The account you uncovered in the Caymans? It's just the tip of the iceberg. They've funneled millions through intermediary firms, siphoning resources from Argent under the guise of legitimate transactions." Anthony leaned forward. "And it's not just financial. Gabriel's name shows up in encrypted communications tied to Shoreline's strategic plans. They've been scouting ways to leverage Argent's patents to their advantage. If this comes to light, it could trigger investigations into Argent's integrity." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "It won't come to light. At least not the way they intend. What I want now is an internal audit. Start with Shoreline's contracts and work backward. We need evidence to dismantle this from the inside out." Sylvia nodded. "Understood. But you should know, Evelyn, this isn't just about money or power. There's something deeper driving Gabriel. He's not just angry, he's desperate." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll use that desperation against him." As the days passed, Evelyn's strategy unfolded with precision. First, she subtly shifted Robert's responsibilities, assigning key projects to other executives under the guise of efficiency. She had Anthony monitor Robert's computer and phone, documenting every questionable action. Meanwhile, Gabriel's movements became more erratic. He left the house at odd hours, returned only briefly, and avoided Evelyn entirely. She followed him twice, using a private car service to ensure she wasn't recognized. Each time, he met with Robert in dimly lit bars or secluded park benches, their body language tense. Evelyn hired a second investigator to follow Gabriel without his knowledge. The reports confirmed her suspicions. Gabriel and Robert were meeting with representatives from rival firms, discussing Argent's proprietary technology. A week later, Evelyn confronted Robert in her office. "Sit," she ordered as he entered. Her tone left no room for argument. Robert's normally confident demeanor faltered. "What's this about?" Evelyn placed a series of documents on the table between them. "These are records of transactions tied to Shoreline Consulting. They show funds flowing from Argent Dynamics into Shell accounts. Every approval was signed off using your credentials." Robert paled. "Evelyn, She raised a hand, silencing him. "I don't care to hear excuses. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to resign immediately. If you comply, I won't press charges." Robert's eyes darted to the door, calculating his chances of escape. "And if I don't?" Evelyn leaned forward, her voice a low growl. "Then I make this public. I will bury you in lawsuits and criminal charges so deep that Gabriel won't recognize you when he visits you in prison." Robert hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Fine, but you don't understand. Gabriel was the mastermind. He pulled me into this." Evelyn cut him off with an icy glare. "Get out." With Robert removed, Evelyn's attention turned fully to Gabriel. Sylvia's investigation had uncovered the final piece of the puzzle, Gabriel's plans to leverage the stolen assets to secure a lucrative position with Argent's largest competitor, Altruism Technologies. The betrayal stung more deeply than she'd expected. Gabriel wasn't simply undermining her company, he was betraying everything they had built together. Evelyn's resolve hardened. She contacted Altruism CEO Richard Coleman, an old rival who respected her enough to take her call. "Richard," Evelyn began, her tone smooth, "I've come across some troubling information about a candidate you're considering." Coleman's curiosity was piqued. "Go on." She laid out the details of Gabriel's actions, leaving no room for doubt about his character. By the end of the call, Coleman had promised to withdraw Gabriel's offer and cooperate fully with any investigation. The climax of Evelyn's plan unfolded during a high-profile investors meeting 2 weeks later. The boardroom buzzed with anticipation as Evelyn presented Argent's latest innovations. Gabriel was among the attendees, his presence intended to lend credibility to his future role with Altruism. As the meeting progressed, Evelyn's presentation took an unexpected turn. She unveiled a slide detailing the financial irregularities tied to Shoreline Consulting. The room fell silent as she outlined the evidence. Argent Dynamics has been the target of a coordinated attempt to destabilize our operations, Evelyn said, her voice steady. But I want to assure our investors that we've identified the culprits and taken corrective action. She paused, locking eyes with Gabriel across the table. Those responsible will be held accountable. Gabriel's face flushed red. He stood abruptly, stammering an excuse, before storming out of the room. Evelyn didn't follow. She had already won. Later that evening, Evelyn sat alone in her penthouse, the city skyline glittering outside the windows. The fallout from the meeting had been swift. Gabriel's reputation was in tatters, and Argent's investors had rallied behind her decisive leadership. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sylvia. Everything is in place. Gabriel and Robert's actions are fully documented. Let me know when you're ready to proceed legally. Evelyn didn't reply immediately. Instead, she poured herself a glass of wine and allowed herself a rare moment of introspection. Gabriel's betrayal had cut deeply, but it hadn't broken her. She had emerged stronger, more focused, and more determined than ever. In the back of her mind, however, a question lingered. What would have happened if I hadn't discovered the truth in time? The thought chilled her, but she pushed it aside. She had built Argent Dynamics into a fortress of innovation and integrity. Now, she would ensure no one could ever breach it again. Evelyn Carrington was no stranger to high-stakes battles. Throughout her career, she had faced cutthroat competitors, market crashes, and aggressive takeovers. But this war, this betrayal by the man she once trusted above all others, was personal. After the explosive investors' meeting that exposed Gabriel and Robert's scheme, Evelyn set her plan for retaliation into motion. For her, victory wasn't just about justice. It was about ensuring that the treachery of these men would be their last attempt to undermine anyone. The first phase of her counterstrike began with silence. Gabriel had fled the investors' meeting humiliated, but Evelyn allowed him time to believe she was done with him. She wanted him to think she'd already taken her pound of flesh. In reality, she was laying the groundwork for a devastating final act. From her penthouse office, Evelyn called her investigator, Sylvia King, to finalize the next steps. Gabriel is desperate, Evelyn said, pacing the length of her office. Desperate people make mistakes. I want every move he makes monitored. Follow the money, his meetings, even his late-night phone calls. If there's a slip, I want to know about it. Sylvia's voice was calm, professional. We're already tracking him. He's trying to shift funds from his private account to another offshore entity, likely a final stash in case he needs to disappear. Let him, Evelyn replied coldly, and make sure every transfer is recorded. He won't escape this. Evelyn's next call was to Richard Coleman, the CEO of Altruism Technologies. She had already dismantled Gabriel's prospects with the company, but she needed Coleman to play a more active role. Richard, she began smoothly, I have a proposal for you. You've seen what Gabriel tried to do to Argent. If you're willing to collaborate with me, we can use this to our mutual advantage. Coleman chuckled, his deep voice brimming with curiosity. You always have something up your sleeve, Evelyn. What are you suggesting? Gabriel will likely approach one of your competitors, probably Finch Dynamics, once he realizes his options are running out. I want you to let me know the moment that happens. And in return, I'll give you access to Argent's revised tech patents before the official release. A strategic partnership could be beneficial for us both. Coleman paused, considering the offer. Deal. I'll have my team notify you the second we hear anything. Phase 2 was more public. Evelyn used her leverage as CEO to launch a series of public relations campaigns, emphasizing Argent's resilience and integrity. These campaigns subtly hinted at the recent scandal without naming names, ensuring that rumors swirled but never reached a definitive conclusion. She also arranged an exclusive interview with Forbes, positioning herself as a visionary leader who had weathered corporate betrayal and come out stronger. Her story painted her as a fighter, a woman who refused to let personal attacks derail her mission. As the article went live, Evelyn monitored the fallout. Social media lit up with praise for her leadership, while industry analysts applauded Argent's transparency and quick action. It was exactly the narrative she wanted to cultivate. Gabriel, meanwhile, was unraveling. The surveillance Sylvia had arranged revealed a man who was scrambling to salvage his reputation. He held clandestine meetings with former colleagues, tried to leverage personal connections for new opportunities, and even reached out to Robert in a desperate attempt to rekindle their alliance. "He's flailing," Sylvia reported. "He's been in contact with Finch Dynamics. They're considering offering him a consultancy role." Evelyn smirked. "Good. Let him think he has a lifeline." In a calculated move, Evelyn arranged to meet with Finch Dynamics CEO Howard Grant under the pretense of discussing a joint venture. Over dinner at a private club, she steered the conversation toward Gabriel. "I hear you're considering bringing Gabriel Shaw into your team," Evelyn said casually, sipping her wine. Grant's expression shifted. Defensive, but curious. "He's approached us with some interesting ideas. Nothing is finalized." Evelyn leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "Howard, I'm going to give you some free advice. Gabriel is poison. He nearly destroyed Argent Dynamics. If you align with him, you'll be inheriting all his liabilities." Grant frowned. "I've heard the rumors, but nothing concrete. Do you have proof?" Evelyn smiled. "You'll find everything you need in this folder." She slid a slim document across the table. "Consider it a courtesy." Grant opened the folder, his expression darkening as he skimmed the contents. "Thank you, Evelyn," he said after a long silence. "I'll make sure Finch Dynamics stays far away from him." Gabriel's world continued to shrink. Finch Dynamics withdrew their offer, and rumors of his involvement in Argent's scandal began to spread through industry circles. His financial resources dwindled as Evelyn froze every shared account and pursued legal action to recover funds he had siphoned. Still, Gabriel attempted one final gambit. He called Evelyn late one night, his voice tinged with desperation. "Eva," he began, "we need to talk." "There's nothing left to say," she replied, her tone icy. "I made mistakes, but you're destroying me. Do you really want that on your conscience?" Evelyn's laugh was sharp. "You betrayed me, Gabriel. You stole from me, lied to me, and tried to dismantle everything I've built. You don't get to play the victim now." "Please," he begged. "If you stop this, I'll leave quietly. You won't hear from me again." Evelyn's voice turned to steel. "You're already done, Gabriel. The only thing left is for you to face the consequences." The final blow came at a corporate conference attended by the industry's most powerful figures. Evelyn took the stage to unveil Argent's latest innovation, a breakthrough in artificial intelligence that promised to revolutionize logistics. Her presentation was flawless, her vision clear. At the end of the presentation, a reporter asked about the recent financial scandal. Evelyn didn't shy away. "We faced a significant betrayal from within," she said, her voice steady. "But Argent Dynamics is stronger than ever because we acted decisively. We rooted out the corruption, and we've implemented new safeguards to ensure this never happens again." The room erupted in applause, and Evelyn left the stage victorious. Back in her penthouse that evening, Evelyn poured herself a glass of wine. She stood by the window, staring out at the city that had been the backdrop to her triumphs and struggles. Gabriel was gone, professionally ruined, and legally entangled in a web of lawsuits he couldn't escape. Argent was secure, its reputation restored, and Evelyn, though scarred by the betrayal, had proven once again that she was unbreakable. Yet, as she watched the lights of Manhattan glitter in the distance, a thought lingered in her mind. In war, even victory leaves casualties. But Evelyn Carrington wasn't one to dwell on losses. She had too much left to build. The months following Gabriel's downfall passed in a blur of calculated moves and relentless focus. Evelyn Carrington was no stranger to resilience, but even she hadn't anticipated the toll of dismantling both a personal and professional betrayal of such magnitude. Yet, as Argent dynamics stabilized and her personal life adjusted to its new reality, Evelyn found herself reflecting on what it truly meant to rebuild. The first step was addressing the company's internal culture. Gabriel and Robert's scheme had left cracks in Argent's foundation, not in its finances, but in the trust between departments. Evelyn understood that silence bred suspicion, and suspicion could fester. She called a company-wide meeting in Argent's largest auditorium, the kind of event reserved for major announcements. Employees from every level gathered, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Standing on the stage, Evelyn addressed them directly. "You've heard the rumors," she began, her voice steady. "And I owe it to each of you to confirm the truth. Argent was targeted by individuals who sought to exploit this company for personal gain. Those individuals are no longer with us." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. Evelyn held up a hand, commanding silence. "Argent is more than a business. It's a family. And just as we weather this storm together, we will emerge stronger together. Moving forward, I am implementing new measures to ensure transparency and accountability. Our strength lies in our people, and I will make sure none of you ever feel compromised." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Evelyn knew words were only the beginning. Over the next several weeks, she worked tirelessly with her executive team to overhaul internal protocols. Anonymous reporting systems were enhanced, oversight committees were restructured, and Evelyn made it a point to be visible, walking through departments, engaging directly with employees, and rebuilding the trust that had been shaken. On the personal front, Evelyn faced a more delicate challenge. Gabriel had left their shared life in ruins, and she was left to navigate the emotional wreckage. Their divorce, finalized quickly thanks to her ironclad legal team, was a clean split. Evelyn retained the penthouse and the majority of their joint assets, while Gabriel, financially depleted, vanished from her world. But the scars of his betrayal lingered. Evelyn found herself scrutinizing every interaction, questioning even the smallest gestures of kindness from those around her. Sylvia King, ever the pragmatist, had warned her about this. "Trust is like glass," Sylvia had said during one of their late-night strategy meetings. "Once it's broken, even if you repair it, the cracks are always there." Evelyn had nodded at the time, brushing off the sentiment, but now, as she stood in the solitude of her penthouse, she realized just how deeply the cracks had spread. It was during one of her rare moments of introspection that Evelyn decided to revisit an old passion, something that had nothing to do with boardrooms or corporate takeovers. She dusted off her long-forgotten sketch pad and began drawing again. Architecture had been her first love, a field she'd abandoned in favor of the tech world's allure. But now, as she sketched sleek designs and intricate blueprints, Evelyn felt a part of herself reawakening. One evening, she took her sketches to a small community center she'd quietly supported for years. The director, an old college friend named Lila, greeted her warmly. "Evelyn Carrington gracing us mere mortals with your presence," Lila teased. Evelyn smiled, handing her the sketches. "I've been thinking about the expansion project you mentioned. These are some ideas I had." Lila flipped through the pages, her eyes widening. "These are incredible. Are you sure you want to donate them?" "I've always believed in investing in the future," Evelyn replied, "and after everything, I think it's time I started creating again." The project became a quiet but fulfilling escape for Evelyn. She worked with the center's staff to plan the expansion, her evenings spent in collaborative design meetings rather than corporate war rooms. It was a reminder that not everything in her life needed to be about power and control. The final stage of Evelyn's reclamation came in the form of a charity gala she hosted in Argent's name. The event, held in the same ballroom that had once been the site of her and Gabriel's anniversary celebration, symbolized her victory and resilience. Dressed in a midnight blue gown that shimmered under the chandelier's light, Evelyn moved through the crowd with a confidence that felt earned. The guests were a mix of business leaders, politicians, and philanthropists, all eager to align themselves with Argent's restored reputation. As the night progressed, Evelyn found herself in a conversation with Richard Coleman, the CEO of Altruism Technologies. "You've come a long way from where we were 6 months ago," Coleman said, raising his glass in admiration. "I wasn't sure anyone could recover from what happened." Evelyn smiled. Resilience isn't just about surviving. It's about thriving in spite of what tried to destroy you. The evening ended with Evelyn giving a brief speech, her voice filled with gratitude and resolve. "This gala isn't just a celebration of Argent dynamics," she said. "It's a celebration of the people who make this company what it is. Together, we've proven that no challenge is insurmountable. And as we move forward, we'll continue to build something even stronger." The applause was a fitting end to the night, but for Evelyn, it was only the beginning. As she stood by the window of her penthouse later that evening, looking out over the glittering city, Evelyn allowed herself a rare moment of peace. Gabriel's betrayal had tested her in ways she'd never imagined, but it had also taught her something invaluable. Her strength didn't come from others. It came from within. And with that strength, Evelyn Carrington knew she could face anything the future held.